Hello noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and today we're talking about the new trailer that has been released by Ubisoft of the upcoming Assassin's Creed game, which is called Black Flag. Assassin's Creed's game, which is called Shadows, and this game is set in Japan, but this trailer has generated a little bit of a sort of controversy, if you will. The protagonist, or one of the two protagonists in this game, hasn't been received the same way by all people. The issue at the basis of this discussion being the fact that even though the game is set in Feudal Japan, you're not playing a Japanese character, but you're playing as a black African samurai. As it's always the case in this situation, of course, this has become a new battleground for the culture war. And to be honest, I think that the comment section under that video is very well suited for the Sengoku period. With, on one side, people screaming and calling everyone racist and bigot for not liking the black African character, and on the other side, people that are completely ignoring history, saying that such a character never existed, clearly being ready to die on that hill. As it's often the case, reality is somewhere in between. So hopefully with this video I'll provide a professional, nuanced and measured response which only looks at the facts and ignores the freaking culture war. And that's what we're gonna talk about today. The character is indeed based on a real historical person called Yasuke, who was a black African who lived in Japan precisely at the end of the Sengoku period. Not too long ago I have made a video dedicated to him, in collaboration with my friend Dario, who helped us with visualization, not only because of course he's black so he was reenacting Yasuke, but also because he happens to be the exact same height as the historical Yasuke was. We had a great time. Of course we're going to review the trailer together, also because I'm kind of curious to see, okay, but how did they represent this, because very much will depend on that. But I would like to address the elephant in the room first and foremost, very quickly. You think that the comment section under that video trailer is bad? Well, get ready for absolute hell. Enter the Wikipedia page of Yasuke, which in the last, I want to say, couple of days has become an absolute battleground of editing, insults and attacks. Look at how many edits have been made just in the last few days. Whether he was a samurai or not, while insulting each other. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Who are you?
Impressive English.
Who do you serve?
I have ever known in my life. I will end.
As always, these trailers look absolutely beautiful. It's stunning, but it's Ubisoft they're talking about, so don't pre-order until they show you actual gameplay.
Our customs. My family. Burns in the name of unification.
Yeah, it's a Shinto shrine, that's what they do. They clap their hands because it's their way to attract the spirits of the nature, the kami, to their position. So they do that so that the spirits hear it and then they pray. That's how they do it. Well, I've got to say, the armor looks amazing, so I'm really happy with that. I mean, we're a little spoiled, aren't we, with the likes of, for example, Ghost of Tsushima, which is another game that does the armor really well, but always love to see it. Okay, so she's clearly trained in combat, and that's pretty cool though that she is struggling against the fully armored samurai. That's something that I like seeing, because it's more realistic. I mean, it would have been really difficult to take a samurai in armor on, never mind two.
You are still a frog in a well.
Is that who I think it is?
Who knows nothing of the sea. The ocean's filled with new ships, but they all come from the same river. Greed.
Be interesting to see if they show some Western people, because I mean, if there is Yasuke, it means that automatically there are Jesuits already, if they are going to follow the history. So, be nice to see the Jesuits represented. I'd like to see, at this time, some Jesuits would have been wearing orange as their color, although then some would have already been reverting to black. It kind of depends on who was the head. Be nice if they show that. So yes, they chose to go with Yasuke. as you can see. I think the model looks really cool. The hair is not really accurate if this picture does represent Yasuke, but as we can see here, he's absolutely represented as a fully fledged samurai. Is that historically accurate or not? We will dive into that, and I'll give you all the sources to answer this professionally. But for now, let's keep watching.
Power.
Oh, look at those matchlock type arquebuses. They look great.
Vengeance.
Of course, the fact that the blade went through the entirety of the armor of the opponent is nonsense, but the fact that he is so strong is in fact based on what we are told in the sources. We are told that he was extremely strong. Once again, a justification of this statement with a period source. On the 23rd of the second month, a blackamoor came from the Christian country. He appeared to be 26 or 27 years old, black over his whole body, just like an ox. This man looked robust and had a good demeanor. What is more, his formidable strength surpassed that of 10 men. I don't mind if they show him like lifting people up. I just wish he didn't go through both layers of armor.
And you... will you continue down that river?
As I often complain about, a samurai would never put the sword back in the scabbard before they cleaned the blade with a piece of cloth of the blood. So this idea that you kill people and put the sword right back, I know it looks cool, we have seen it everywhere, all the way from like not only old movies, but also I want to say Way of the Samurai, which is one of my favorite series. It still is nonsense though, so it'd be nice if one day we see them do it at least once, just once, clean the freaking blade and then put it back in the scabbard. Otherwise, bye bye sword maintenance.
Or choose another path.
Right, so that's the reveal, of course. They're showing us, look, it's an African man. We checked the boxes. Yay. That's what they're doing. Of course, from an artistic standpoint, because let's remember, regardless of what you think of these sort of pushed inclusivity in these games, one thing that is important to underline is that 3D artists still should be praised for the work they've done, because it is exceptional. It looks fantastic.
Beyond what we see.
And we must look for it. Together.
She's wearing the sword on her back. There are a few images that show that, but usually was done with massive swords and of course outside of the field of battle. Well, right now she's not on the field of battle, but a sword like that, it would be normally worn on the side or on your hips. As I say, just massive swords were carried that way.
We must learn to trust. Rebuild.
And follow the blade.
Yeah, the fact that the child looked at the black man and she was like, oh my gosh, that would have been exactly how the Japanese would have reacted. Also because of the height difference, not just the skin color, which of course was something that they did notice. In fact, as we do have mentioned specifically about that. But apart from that, he was extremely tall. In fact, I did on my previous video, in order to kind of show you visually the stark difference, I had my friend Dario wear samurai armor and then having him stand next to my mom. Well, my late mom now, unfortunately, but right next to her, because she kind of has the average height of a Japanese of that era, so you can see the stark contrast. I have nothing against the creative freedom of developers when they decide to set a game somewhere and decide what sort of story they want to tell. There's absolutely nothing wrong from that point of view for Ubisoft to decide, hey, we want to tell a story of this specific historical character. However, we need to be honest, and let's stop the gaslighting here. We know exactly why they're doing it, and they're not doing it for creative freedom, they're doing it for DEI, inclusivity, representation. And another thing that we do need to say is the fact that even though absolutely I'm sure that there will be people, probably a minority of people in those comments, that are actual racists that are taking the excuse of historical accuracy to hate on the character, but in reality they hate him just because he's black, we also need to take into consideration the fact that that's not the case for everyone who doesn't like this specific character choice. And it is very wrong to just point the finger at people and call them racists just because they say they don't like like this choice, it doesn't automatically make them racist. In fact, if you look at what the Assassin's Creed series has been doing and has done throughout its entire existence, is that Assassin's Creed's origin is set in Egypt, the protagonist is Egyptian. Another game is set in Norse Scandinavia, the protagonist is a Norse. Then they have Assassin's Creed 2 set in medieval or Renaissance Florence, then Ezio Auditore can't get more Italian than that. So the fact that this one is set in Japan, it just makes sense that a fan of the series could say, well, yeah, but why isn't the character Japanese? And that doesn't make them racists. Let's stop this sort of hatred as well, because then you are showing your own. Alright, let me give you some facts now about Yasuke, talk about whether he was a samurai or not, and then we get back to the rest of the trailer. So, was Yasuke a samurai? Was he just a retainer? Was it just a guy who was carrying swords? What is the truth? What do the sources say? Yasuke is a historical character. He was a black African. We don't know what his real name was, and we don't know from which part of Africa he came from, with the two most likely possibilities being either Sudan or Mozambique. We know that as a child he was sold as a slave. He was already very tall and quite strong when he was delivered in India. He trained as a warrior, had experience in battle, and eventually will start working for the Jesuits. And it was in fact the Jesuits that brought him with them in the late 15th century to Japan. When he entered Japan, Yasuke was working for a specific priest and missionary by the name of Alessandro Valignano from Chieti in the Kingdom of Naples. And this will be the man that will eventually gift him to Oda Nobunaga, who was a man that we all know, very important feudal lord of the late Sengoku period in Japan, whose character and personality, as we read the records, demonstrate that he had a fascination for anything Western. Not only he liked the Jesuits, he liked what they brought, he liked the sort of armor that they would bring from Europe. He even granted the Jesuits land in order for them to be able to build a Western-style church, and then he even expanded it. And one of the characteristics of Oda Nobunaga was his fascination for things that were rare. Let me justify this with a period source. The veteran brought him along by the way of paying respects to Nobunaga. Indeed, it was owing to Nobunaga's power and his glory that yet unheard of treasures from the three countries and curiosities of this kind came to be seen here time and again. A blessing indeed. And just like everyone else in feudal Japan, when he saw Yasuke being not only as black as it gets, but being also a massive man, he was 188 centimeters tall, he decided to hire him not only as a retainer, but as far as we know, as someone who would go with him everywhere he would go. Yes, carry his swords, but that wasn't just the only thing he would do. He was basically a bodyguard. Now, the discussion whether he was actually given the title samurai or not is harder to answer, and the reality is that we don't know. But it is equally important to say that there are quite a few people who are very respected in academia who do think that he was indeed made samurai. We are going to read the most important mentions that we have from the period about Yasuke right now on this video. But the first question I have when it comes to the actual record is the following. Do we have a mention, a specific mention that tells us Yasuke was a samurai? Well, the answer is no, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he wasn't. Allow me to elaborate. The lack of any mention of him being samurai in any record of the period is often brought up as a proof, if you will, of him not being samurai, because if he was given the title of samurai then they would have written it. However, after speaking with Professor Thomas Lockley, author of the book African Samurai, he shared with me something very interesting. Thomas brought up very interesting points when it comes to this in the emails that he sent to me. And something that is important to consider is that even though the word samurai in Japanese did exist at the time, it wasn't used as much as it is today. A little bit like the word ninja, if you will, that was, as far as we know, was not used in period, it may be late Edo period, but in the Sengoku period and even before that, shinobi no mono would have been the way people would have called a ninja. Similarly, the word samurai existed, but there were many other alternatives, one of which would be bushi, for example, even though it's a bit of an umbrella term, but many others. And then when it comes to ranks, you had hatamoto, and then depending on what sort of job, for example, a specific warrior was doing, it would be called by that specific job. But in general, we'll have to wait another 20 years before the word samurai starts being used formally in documented evidence from the time of Yasuke. So, the simple fact that no one said he was a samurai is not automatic evidence that he wasn't, because they weren't using that word in the sources. Now, you know that I'm not a huge fan of Wikipedia as a source, but it's important to have a look at it. Now, let's dismiss for a moment the English Wikipedia, since it's been probably changed 17 times since I started this recording, and let's have a look at the Japanese one. In the Japanese Wikipedia, we do find the word samurai, but only in connection with pop culture. But we do find an interesting passage that, when translated, tells us that, according to Japanese Wikipedia, he was made into a bushi. Now, is bushi an absolute equivalent of samurai? No. In the sense that all samurai are bushi, but not necessarily all bushi are samurai. Bushi is a bit of a broader term, and even though, once again, in the modern usage they have become synonymous, they weren't necessarily in period. Still, if we are told that he was indeed called a bushi, well, at least it would tell us that he wasn't just the guy that carries stuff around, but he was indeed some kind of warrior, recognized by the local authorities. So what do they base this statement on? Once again, massive thanks to Thomas for this one, but we also have an unpublished extract which reads: "This black man called Yasuke was given a stipend, a private residence, etc., and was given a short sword with a decorative sheath. He is sometimes seen in the role of a weapon bearer." So as you notice, the role of the weapon bearer is indeed mentioned, but it's not the only characteristic that defines Yasuke and his position within the social scale and his rank. So saying he was just the guy who carried the sword of Nobunaga, apart from the fact that that would have been an honor, but is not accurate. We also read, "Returning from the campaign against Takeda in 1582, a relative of Ieyasu wrote, Lord Nobunaga gave the black man who the missionary presented him with a stipend. His skin was black like ink, and he was around 6.2 shaku tall. He was called Yasuke." It would be very rare that a foreigner could be nominated samurai, but it's not unheard of because, of course, we all know about William Adams, the English samurai, and he was indeed a foreigner. It's a little bit of a later tale, with kind of a 30 years difference, 30, 40 years difference from the period of Yasuke, but it is still very close, and we see that in fact it does happen, in that case with Tokugawa Ieyasu, that sometimes foreigner could indeed become samurai. We also know that the Jesuit reported about a promotion that he received, becoming a tono. Now we don't know what that means, but it is likely that it meant that he was now in line for a fief of his own. If you appreciate my content so far and wish to help ensure my ability to continue to tell it how it is, regardless of any possible backlash, please support this channel on Patreon. Any support helps me and my team of academics keep the channel strong and gives us the means to fight back against the political rewriting of history. Stand with us. Form the wall, defend the truth. On the 21st of June 1582, Oda Nobunaga was betrayed by the likes of Akechi Mitsuhide, who was a vassal of his. Now, during this entire incident, of which we'll have a look at a few of the reports, something interesting and even significant happens. He survives. Now, if he had become a samurai after the death of his lord, well, he should have been forced to commit seppuku, or harakiri as is more commonly known in the West. So on one side this could speak towards the idea of, well, yeah, but so he was a warrior but not samurai. On the other hand though, it is possible that they were going to do that, but then his life was spared precisely because he wasn't Japanese, and therefore they thought, you know what, yeah, he made you a samurai, but he doesn't need to die like that. And his life was spared. That's also a way to read it. Up to you to decide. Right, so first of all, the castles look great, as it's always the case, really. I mean, Japanese castles are always, whether it be Sekiro, whether it be the Way of the Samurai, literally they always look great. But now we see a little bit of shinobi action, I think, so it seems like he's the samurai, but she's a bit more of a spy, I imagine. Yeah, the combat looks really cool. Of course, the idea of a single kunoichi who takes on so many armed samurai in full battle gear is nonsense. That's complete fantasy. Real kunoichi, as far as we know, or in general the idea of the shinobi, it's not that you just take on fully armored samurai like that. That would be suicidal. Also because not all shinobi were trained in combat, but even if you were one of those who was sort of doubling as a warrior at the same time, so a samurai and shinobi at the same time, still you wouldn't do that if you were on a mission like this and you're wearing no armor. No, you would just try to infiltrate, and then if you do decide to do something and you do need to fight, yeah, you wouldn't do that, you would just flee. But then again, a little bit of a fantasy situation, and it does look really good for the choreography. I don't know how they didn't see him come in there, because one thing Yasuke cannot do, of course, is stealth, since, I mean, it's super tall and he's black in feudal Japan, but I don't think that that's the sort of gameplay that they expect you to do with him. And he's wielding a kanabo, so this sort of anti-armor weapon. I like that, that's pretty cool. I'm absolutely sure that if the original Sasuke, the historical one, had a kanabo in his hands, that would be quite scary to have to deal with for a Japanese warrior of the time. Like 100%. The guy was massive.
I said, who do you serve? We are the shadows.
That served the light.
Hey, the samurai died with honor, so as I'm concerned, full respect for the guy, he just ran towards her. Okay, so yes, when we look at the way he fights, it's interesting that in the trailer we see that he's literally fighting like a samurai, the way he puts the sword back. He handles, looks exactly like a samurai would have fought. This would not be consistent with what we understand about Yasuke, and even William Adams if you think about it. I mean, at the end of the day, just because you are getting a title, that doesn't automatically mean that you also acquire all the skills that a samurai would have learned over a space of, I want to say, 10 to 20 years. So even though it's very probable that historical Yasuke knew how to fight, it is also very likely that even if you gave him Japanese weapons, he wouldn't have fought like a Japanese, if you see the point I'm drawing. Now, when it comes to iconography, once again, we don't have much and the situation is quite nebulous, but we do have one specific panel, this one here, that possibly is representing Yasuke with Oda Nobunaga right next to him. Now, we don't know if that's the case, but it is interesting that this being an early 1600s piece of artwork, it is very probable that it's indeed depicting Yasuke, considering the fact of how rare an African man would have been in period in Japan. So it's probably as close as we can get. Unfortunately, we do not have any period representation of him wearing or donning full samurai armor. But as we read, we do know that he was given a weapon. Now, does the fact that he received a weapon automatically means that he was nominated samurai? No, because once again, I've seen this written sometimes and people say, well, if he was given weapons, then automatically means he was samurai. Not necessarily. Ashigaru were carrying weapons. They weren't samurai. But it is noteworthy, and it was absolutely a token of honor that was given to a foreigner. So, the only real answer we can present is the fact that we don't know. We cannot say for certain that Yasuke was a samurai, but we also cannot just dismiss it with the same level of certainty and say no, he absolutely wasn't. As you see, he was given a stipend, as you see, he was given land. Therefore, it is possible that he was also given the title of samurai, but we don't know for sure, and it cannot be stated as a fact. So, after all of this, was Yasuke samurai? We don't know. Is it 100%? No. So this is the situation. But at the end of the day, I think what's really important here is to keep in mind people can like it, people can dislike it, and that doesn't make you neither a bigot if you don't like him or a woke if you do like him. Let's try and keep an open mind. And as always, if you have any historical questions, feel free to ask me in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.